This morning we honor our graduates and their families as they celebrate a significant milestone along the journey of life. The quest for a high school diploma, a university degree, or a postgraduate degree has ended after a long season of hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance. And at the end of this quest, they arrive at the opportunity of a new beginning. Before our graduates today, there are many paths that they may explore and many decisions they will be called upon to make. They will receive the advice and the wisdom from many people who hope that in the living of their lives they will find meaning and fulfillment, happiness and joy. Yet this morning, as the people of God, we face a question of great significance too. What will we say to them at this new beginning? I pray that we will say to them, "No. No, there is a God." Be conscious and aware of the existence of God. God who created and sustains the world in which you live with the creative power of His Word. God who created you in His image to be more than an animal and a little lower than Himself. God who, in the gift of your life, made a gift to His world. And God alone, who possesses the wisdom and truth, the mercy and love, the power and hope to guide you through the many seasons of life that await you on this earth. This morning, at this time of a new beginning, I want us all to recall young King Solomon and the significant decision he made at that new beginning for him. When he made this decision, he may have been close to the age of our graduates, when far beyond the wisdom of his years, he made a decision that significantly impacted his life. As you recall, he is the third king of Israel. He is not a warrior king like his father David, nor even like King Saul, from whom the throne had been taken. He had not won the people's love and devotion on the battlefield by defeating their enemies and securing their homes. Solomon was not the people's choice for king. His rise to the throne had been orchestrated through political intrigue, inspired by his mother Bathsheba, by the prophet Nathan, by the power players in David's court, and also with the power of the royal guard. His dying father had placed the unsteady crown on his head. His handsome brother Adoniah had already made himself king, the anointed king. And so Solomon, at a tender young age, receives a kingdom divided within itself. It is during these days of uncertainty and turmoil that the Lord God visits Solomon in a dream. And in this dream, God asks Solomon a simple and direct question. A question intended to reveal the true nature of Solomon's heart. God asked him, "Ask me," God says to him, "Ask me what I should give to you." Now, given the circumstances, I made a mistake. Now, given the circumstances, There are many things that Solomon might have considered. Given the political turmoil around him, he might have asked God to protect his life. Like his father, he may have asked for victory over his enemies. He might have even asked for great wealth and power. But as you heard, Solomon does not ask for these things. Recognizes his own youth and his own inexperience, Solomon asks for wisdom, for an understanding mind, to be able to discern between right and wrong, good and evil, so that he might govern God's chosen people well. Because he chose wisdom, God honored his request and bestowed upon him riches and honor. Bestowed upon him the promise that no other king in the history of Israel would ever compare to him. He also promised him long life if he would keep the commandments and laws of God like his father David. This morning, I would encourage all of us to know God above all things. Regardless of the season of life that we are facing, despite whether we're at the beginning or at the conclusion of our lives and our days on this earth, let us know God above all things. Let us settle for ourselves any questions we may have about the reality of God, about the power and presence of God, about the love and compassion of God, about the truth and the peace of God. Let us know in our hearts and in our minds that the God who made us and the God who calls us to serve him and to worship him has a claim on our lives. Now, it appears very difficult in these early years of the 21st century for many people to take seriously the reality of God. The words of Alfred Delp bring this fact to bear on us. The words that I captured in the reflection for today were written by Delp while in a German prison shortly before he was put to death for treason by the Nazis. Yet these words, written in February of 1944, appear to have a frightening finality in our own time. His words were written in the madness of World War II, a world conflict threatening the very existence of Western civilization, a conquest inspired by a vision of a superior race hatched by a madman. A madman who in his evil was able to use the religion of the German people to suppress their spirit and their freedom. Delp's words appear to be fulfilled in our time, a time of unbelievable wealth and privilege for a few, a time dominated by materialism and affluence, technology, and entertainment, a time when we appear to be wrapped up in ourselves. We're always thinking of our fulfillment, our opportunities, our dreams, our visions, our lives, our homes, our places in the world. Notice, please, the emphasis upon our. We have lost our way. And as Alfred Delp warns, God is no longer with us in the conscious sense of the word. He is denied, ignored, excluded from every claim to be a part of our daily lives. We find ourselves resisting God as an intruder into our plans for our living. We find it increasingly difficult to surrender our wills to God's will. We behave as if we no longer need God except in a moment of crisis or fear. We find it increasingly difficult to experience God in a way that significantly challenges the way we live, our decision-making, and our lives. We do live in a period of time when people are at best committed agnostics, denying in their daily lives the reality of God and the presence of God. We live in a time when many people claim to know what they believe about God and then deny the very God in whom they claim to believe in the ways they choose to live their lives each day. Tragically, as death describes, it seems we no longer have a God conscience. From our perspective, God is often nowhere near us. For our graduates this morning, I admit this may be challenging for you, and it may be hard for you to understand what I'm trying to say to you at this beginning, this new beginning of your life. But for the sake of the world this morning, I'm asking you to sit a little higher in your seats and think a little deeper. I encourage you to know God, to seek God, to pursue with great passion your life and your destiny within God's will for all humanity and for His earth. I plead to you to resist the world you are going into for the sake of your soul, for the sake of the world, even for my sake. And for those of us here this morning who surround our graduates, I encourage us to know God, to seek God, to pursue with great passion our life and our destiny within God's will for all humanity and for the earth. I plead for you to resist the world in which you are living for the sake of your soul, for the sake of the world, and even for my sake. Regretfully, in Solomon's youth, he possessed an advantage over us today. An advantage that we apparently have surrendered. In Solomon's time, the reality and presence of God was unquestioned. God was not considered an intruder into His world. For God's chosen people, God was very real, judging them, saving them, delivering them, redeeming them, and directing them along their way in the world. Yet tragically, not even an awareness of the pervading presence of God could keep Solomon from a fatal conclusion in his life. At the end of his life, in 1 Kings 11, we read, when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods. Now, please understand what the writer means by wives turning his heart after other gods. For you see, these wives and these temples to the other gods that Solomon worshipped were just an expression of military and diplomatic alliances he had made to secure his kingdom. By the end of his life, Solomon trusted these alliances more than he trusted God. And I cannot help but think of King Solomon when I hear Jesus say, "What advantage is it for you to gain the whole world and in the end to lose your soul?" There is an account of an event in the life of Robert Louis Stevenson. If you grew up in South Carolina, Treasure Island was required reading in the 7th grade. But during Stevenson's childhood, he was quite ill. He was often sick and had to be in his room. One night, his nurse came in to check on him and found him with his nose pressed up against the cold window pane in the midst of wintertime. He was looking out the window, mesmerized by what was before him. His nurse asked him to come away from the window lest he catch the death of cold, but he refused. He didn't budge. And so the nurse asked him what he was watching. The boy Stevenson replied, "I am watching a man poke holes in the darkness. I am watching a man poke holes in the darkness." When the nurse came over and peered through the window, she saw the man who lighted the gas street lights, moving from lamppost to lamppost, lighting the gas lantern. He was the man poking holes in the darkness. Graduates of high school and college and postgraduate work, members and friends of Immanuel, as you go into the world, and you will go, we need you to poke holes in the darkness. We need you to poke holes in the darkness so the light of the God who lives may shine through. The light of God's presence and God's power. The light of God's truth and God's love. The light of God's mercy and God's compassion. Today, this world needs folks who know God is and God lives to poke holes in the darkness below which humankind is dying. So, today, May 18th, 2014, before you take another step into the world, settle the question for you. Is there a God upon whom you depend and live your life, or not? For God needs you, and the world needs you. The world needs to know that someone on this planet knows there is a God. People who live with the reality of God foremost in their hearts and their minds. Today we need you. Certain of your faith in God, to poke holes in the darkness as you go with God's strength. Please, for all our sakes, poke holes in the darkness.